Is this thing on? You all can hear me? All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you all very much for joining us here at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. My name is Hallie Hardy. I am the Executive Director of Horse Country, Inc., which is based in Lexington, Kentucky. But tonight I get to be an MC of sorts, if you will, and I feel very privileged to do so. Tonight's event, Amplifying the Future of Racing, is really about spreading awareness of educational, workforce, and international opportunities across our industry. I'm sure several of us in here today can recognize and identify that, like many across the globe in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, our industry is struggling to attract and retain a sustainable workforce. And while in the wake of the pandemic, we're most certainly not alone in those struggles, it is of the utmost importance for us to proactively engage in educational and workforce initiatives, again, not just for the short term coming out of COVID-19, but in sustainable and strategic ways to ensure the longevity of this sport that we all love. And so fortunately, there are individuals and organizations whose missions and objectives take the mantle of that very important task. And as a great example, we're meeting here in one of them tonight, right? The National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame welcomes thousands of guests each year, not to mention the outreach that Kate and her team do within the Saratoga community here, but also the wider Thoroughbred community as well. Our hosts tonight, Amplify Horse Racing and Together for Racing International, who you will hear from this evening and about this evening, are solely focused on engaging youth and newcomers to our industry. The organization that I lead, Horse Country, provides people of all walks of life with an introduction to the equine industry. So bottom line, there are really positive things happening in this space across our industry. And the goal of tonight is to share them with you, because in order for them to be successful, they need engagement from our industry in order to grow and in order to develop new active participants of the sport. So throughout tonight, we hope to provide you with real, tangible action points, including initiatives and programs that you can get directly involved with. Of course, I'm assuming everybody here has other employment, right? Not all of us can focus on engaging with the youth and young people in our industry. But if we each contribute what we can provide young people and newcomers with robust opportunities to get involved. So I know not as many young people necessarily here, but which is good, because a lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight are about how individuals like us who work in this industry can really contribute and engage. And really, we hope that no matter what's brought you tonight, you'll leave here with new information and understanding those opportunities so you can get involved and hopefully have a little bit more of an invigorated outlook on the future of thoroughbred racing and breeding. Before I introduce our first speaker and get things really kicked off, I think it's a worthwhile thing for us to all just take a minute for a little bit of reflection. If you will, please think back to how you first got involved in the thoroughbred industry. What was the bug, if you will, that bit you, right? We've all said that at some point in time in our careers, I'm sure. Was it a particular horse, an experience at a track, or a person that got you interested? And I ask you to reflect on that moment here tonight, or the collection of those moments, and keep those in consideration throughout the night as you hear about these important initiatives happening now. So to our first speaker, I'm really proud to introduce you to Denise, who's become a very good friend, but is just an incredible individual. She's one of the co-creators and now the president of Amplify Horse Racing. I was going to speak a lot to what Amplify is, but I should probably just leave that to you, because that's your whole presentation, right? So as you learn more about this, it's really hard to imagine a better person to lead this organization than Denise. Denise grew up participating in 4-H in her hometown near Fargo, North Dakota. Her love of horse racing stemmed from watching the movie Ruffian. So there in itself is a perfect example, right? We all had something that clicked for us, and then we pursued having a career and working in this industry. She began to spend time at the North Dakota Horse Park, the nearest racetrack to her, after Ruffian inspired her. While in school at North Dakota State University, she completed internships with Canterbury Park, the American Quarter Horse Association, and right here in Saratoga with the Saratoga Special. After graduation, she moved to Lexington, Kentucky, completed internships with Fasig-Tipton, Kingland, and Mill Ridge Farm before being accepted into the Godolphin Flying Start program. Denise, actually, while on the Flying Start and with the help of Amplify co-founder Madison Scott, actually created the business plan for Amplify as her final project for Flying Start. Denise has currently been housed at the Kentucky Equine Education Project, where she's been helping at the state level with education initiatives, and with their support has really been able to get the legs underneath Amplify. You may recognize her as well from La Trifecta, a Spanish horse racing program that she co-hosts, as she is also fluent in Spanish. So I think that list in of itself, as you're listening to hear about what Amplify is accomplishing, she is very, very well qualified. And I think you said too, if you had listened to La Trifecta last week, you had the trifecta for the Jim Dandy, didn't you? It's pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I don't think you actually bet it, but you recommended that other people bet it. Hey, you got to start somewhere. So I can personally speak to Denise's passion for the mission of Amplify, and I'm really excited to see where she's going to lead this organization. But with that, I will leave it to her now to come up and tell you what Amplify has accomplished so far and what their future looks like.
Thanks, Hallie. Hallie also is a great co-pilot when it comes to making really long drives, but I still drove the whole time, all 12 hours up to Saratoga, but that's all good. I just can't see this very well, so I'm just going to follow this presentation as I go along. But my name is Denise Pleasure, and as you probably got from that introduction from Hallie, very, very nice introduction, I am really passionate about education in the thoroughbred industry, and a lot of that is because of my own path that I had to navigate when getting into the industry. And I'm sure for many of you, because I see and recognize a lot of familiar faces from the thoroughbred industry, we all kind of had to navigate this long, winding path, and you might sort of stumble upon horse racing by turning it on TV or seeing a movie, or maybe you visited the track for the first time with a parent. But then what is the next step from there? You know, where exactly are we directing our youth to actually actively engage them in the industry and then give them that next step to pursue a career, or maybe eventually someday consider becoming an owner, or just becoming a fan of the sport is also really, really powerful. So today's presentation, while I would love to talk about every single educational initiative in the thoroughbred industry, of which there are many across many states, and that actually gets into the name of Amplify, where Amplify came from, is that we wanted to amplify all of the educational programs that there are state by state, make sure that there are touch points in a variety of states, but then connect them and fill in the gaps from there. So because I can't talk about every program, we created the cool table of all the resources outside that I do recommend you guys to check out when you're heading out. If you haven't already checked them out, please take many papers, because we have a lot and I can't bring them back with me on the 12-hour drive. And then the other organization that we're going to be talking about is Together for Racing International, which really exemplifies how education is having an impact globally, that there are a variety of countries that have identified this is a really, really important thing that we need to start looking at if we're going to continue growing and building the future of our industry. And that organization has come together collectively across 6 nations to really start having a global focus on how we can do that moving forward. So to give you guys an overview of what Amplify is, our mission is we're dedicated to amplifying thoroughbred industry education, mentorship, and career opportunities. Amplify welcomes newcomers, enhances existing educational initiatives, and develops new resources to lead the thoroughbred industry into the future. Because thoroughbred racing is not just a sport of kings, it is a sport for everyone. So that is really the heart of what we do. We want this to be a sport for everyone. We want it to be inclusive and accessible, regardless of what background somebody has coming into it, or where they live, whether they grew up next to a track or a farm, or whether they grew up, never having touched a horse and now they want to get involved. So the way that Amplify began was really identifying the need for a coordinated first step for youth to get involved in the industry. Because as I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of times you become interested and you're like, hey, horse racing, this is really cool. But then when it comes to having, the place where you go to find out all the information and the steps from there, it hasn't to this point been that clear. And then again, as I also mentioned, the desire to amplify existing initiatives, because there are many amazing programs and outreach facilities, and I can think of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Florida, right here in the museum, Minnesota. I could go on and on, that all have exceptional programs, and we might not even know what is happening state by state to be able to share ideas or to be able to work together collectively on building on these programs. I'm going to get more into the creating new programming in a little bit when I talk about Amplify's programming, but also looking at developing a national organization that represents education in our industry. So when you look at a lot of other horse breeds, whether it's the American Quarter Horse Association or Morgan horses, Arabians, paint horses, they all actually have an organized effort to get youth into the industry, whether it's a branch of their breed registry or a distinct organization that gets youth involved and engaging with that breed. So we want to work towards developing that national coordinated effort. What we do, Amplify has developed a mentorship program, which is really our signature program that is going to help in connecting the dots. And I'll get into talking about that in a moment. Live events and engagement. And then we're very proud of the virtual education and social media outreach that we've been able to provide, because there are kids in many states, whether it's Utah or North Dakota or Texas, who might be very far, have to travel a long distance to be able to engage fully with this industry. So we want to make sure that they, as they're scrolling Instagram or on YouTube, that they can come across horse racing and start that learning process regardless of where they are. Amplifying existing initiatives, that's kind of our word, and then our international presence through Together for Racing International. So I promise this is the wordiest slide. They don't get any wordier from here, but I had the most to say about this. And so maybe some of you, as Hallie was having you think back to how you first became involved in the industry, thought about a mentor. And a lot of us, and I see one sitting in front of me, Tom Law was a mentor of mine. Katie Lamonica has been an amazing mentor of mine. We met someone who was a great help to us in some way, whether they saw some ability in our working potential and they introduced us to another person who gave us an internship. They taught us, they were a friend to us, and it's so powerful and amazing to have that mentor, but if you don't know how to establish one, or you don't have the opportunity to maybe put yourself in that position, it can be challenging to build that relationship. So that's where we started the Amplify Mentorship Program, to have a formal process of making that introduction and that pairing. So it was developed through the Elements of Effective Practice for Mentoring, which is basically a best practices system for pairing and introducing people. We don't have any restrictions based on academic performance. We want to welcome kids, whether they want to go into a trade type field or they want to pursue their master's or doctorate's degree. Wherever they are at and the level of education they want to pursue, they are welcome to be part of this industry. It's also a hybrid program, so we can facilitate people working together virtually or in person, or a combination of both, which is welcomed any which way they want to go through the program. And then next year, we're actually working now on being able to expand it to high school students. So it will be offered for 15 through 25-year-olds, which is awesome that we can offer it to such a wide variety of ages and levels. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but I would say at the highest level of this program, we want kids to leave thinking, hey, I really want to be involved in this industry. I want to pursue a career in horse racing. And at the very baseline, most basic level, when they finish the 3 months of their mentorship program, I want them to come out having a better understanding of how the thoroughbred industry works, because it does have a lot of nuances to it. And I want them to have a positive impression of it going forward, because if the least that they leave with is a positive impression of our industry, we've done a good job. Our live events and engagement to this point, as Hallie mentioned, I work closely with the Kentucky Equine Education Project Foundation, so we're primarily based in Kentucky with a lot of that. We started conducting a really cool careers education series. We've kicked off a children's educational series, which focuses on exposing kids, or introducing kids, I should say, who are 12 and under, along with their families, to a program that follows the life cycle of the Thoroughbred. We have provided further educational activation at existing events, which is something I'm really passionate about, is taking an event or a structure that is already there and amplifying it and providing more education. So we've done that at Keeneland College Scholarship Day by providing some behind-the-scenes tours, Kids Club Family Day by providing them some actual equine education. Our Experience Saratoga tours are something really exciting that we're going to be doing next week, working with NITHA and NYRA, so we thank them for their support on that. And that is essentially a all-day immersive experience where the youth who participate are going to have the chance to meet and speak to a variety of industry professionals, mostly focused on teaching them about careers. They're going to come to the museum and visit this. And if they don't love horse racing by the end of the day, then I don't know what more we could do, but I'm sure they're going to have a great time. Our social media and virtual education, as I mentioned, is a big piece of what we do to make sure that we are, getting in front of kids who are in all states, not just those who immediately come to mind when we think of horse racing. So that comes through, I do a virtual horse racing hangout every month, which gives kids a chance to virtually meet a industry professional and engage live. So that is live streamed over our social media. It's kind of like a webinar. We have a podcast, and then we do some special projects around big events in the racing industry, such as the Kentucky Derby, to make sure that during those times when we have the most eyes on our sport, such as these really big racing events, we're providing some enhanced educational coverage on social media that has a chance to bring them in. And as they're asking questions like, hey, this is amazing, how do I now get involved? We're hopefully answering those questions through some of this targeted messaging. Amplifying existing initiatives. So these are just a few of the organizations that we've had a chance to partner and work with. Just as a good example of a really fruitful collaboration, we've worked with the Harness Horse Youth Foundation, which is essentially like the Amplify of the harness horse world, or harness racing world. And so they had put out a guide to careers in harness racing previously. And so we worked together with them to make it into a guide to careers in horse racing. So it has thoroughbred careers, standardbred careers. It's gone out to a variety of schools, 4-H programs, FFA. So that has been a really cool example of what can happen when organizations come together and work together on some of these resources that we have. Looking forward into the future, our goal for Amplify as it expands, and we want this to become a national organization and grow much farther beyond Kentucky, is to create a continuum where we are engaging with youth at a young age, starting to have those touch points when they are 12 and under, engaging with their parents, letting their parents know that this is a really cool industry for their kids to get involved with, and then maintaining that engagement and that interest as they go through middle school by creating curriculum or working with middle school level programs, starting to introduce them to industry pathways through the Mentorship Program as they get involved and go through high school and college. Eventually, we've already had a lot of interest in using the Mentorship Program as a prerequisite to an internship program, and starting to develop more internships that we can send these students onto, and also sending them onto other programs that already exist. And then my dream would be for us to have really be a centralized source for employee recruitment, and to have a really cool, amazing job board where people who are already in the industry can come and look for jobs, as well as young people who are getting into it for the first time and need to find internships. And then as we expand, the benefits to the industry will include promotion of those existing programs and organizations. We can provide resources, which we're already doing, to existing programs to bolster their educational value. A lot of organizations are starting to apply, are encouraging their employees to apply to become mentors, I see all of our mentees as, potential future hires, so it's a great connection to make for businesses, job promotion opportunities, guiding and customizing tours, as well as consulting on internship development. So things that you can do now, I want everybody to be able to take some action points away from this presentation and what you learned today. Becoming a mentor or mentee. I think I see a lot more mentors in this audience. That is something that you can do today. Fill out an application to become a mentor, and it's a really easy first step that you can start actively helping education. Letting us know about programs that we should be aware of. If you go out to that education table and you don't see something that's there, or you know of a program that is really special that we should reach out to and have on our website, let us know. Attending an educational event or even offering to host one. And then also remembering that most all of the organizations that are providing educational opportunities within our industry are nonprofits. And so reaching out to them, supporting them, whether that's through your expertise, as a volunteer, becoming a board member, or supporting them financially are all really valuable ways that you can support growing education in our industry. So, getting into the Together for Racing International piece, Amplify has the privilege of being a U.S. Affiliate, and I'm a U.S. steering committee member for Together for Racing International. And this is an umbrella organization that assists racing globally to contribute to society by improving the lives of its people and communities, which is a very big statement. But boiling that down, the way that it really started was in 2019, Godolphin brought together 6 different racing nations, and they were Ireland, Japan, Australia, Britain, the US, and Japan. There we go. And to talk about where people were struggling when it came to education and workforce, how are we engaging with our communities, what can we do to share ideas and work collectively as an entire racing world to be able to bolster all of these different areas. And so the result of that was Together for Racing International. So I'm going to show you guys a quick clip that takes some pieces from that initial forum for education and kind of helps to illustrate what came out of that forum and why it was important. It was playing automatically before.
If anything needs to be clicked.
So before, when I was scrolling through it, it would just start playing.
Maybe you have to click it.
Yeah, did it click?
It's still playing.
Sorry guys, bear with us for one moment. Well, here, should I try and go back out and then try? There we go.
We're all here today because we want to reflect this core message within our sport. What can we offer the young people of today? Because they offer us a huge amount, and we now have a responsibility to them.
This is not a spectator sport this couple of days, it's participation.
There is nothing more relevant than what we're here for now. And I think some of it's outmoded, and we need to look carefully at that.
The thing I love about this most is that it's brought 6 countries together to share ideas in an industry, if we're honest, full of factions. When those factions come together, then unite. My goodness, this is a powerful sport. It's a wonderful family and is incredibly powerful.
We've been talking about the challenges and opportunities of racing across the world. One of the biggest ones is around people. So how do we, well, first of all, retain staff that we've already got, make sure that we're looking after them properly, And secondly, attract future generations to be part of the sport across all of the many, many opportunities there are in horse racing.
I think fundamental, we're all in this in pursuit because we love the horse. We don't have all the right answers, but I think that we should all have a confidence in trying, learning, and then adapting. And that's how we move forward.
We need to make ourselves available as advocates and mentors to the next generation. We need to engage the public, and we need to stand up straight, look the world in the eye and say, this is us, this is what we do, and we are proud of it.
At the Racing Foundation, we talk about being a catalyst, and I think this event can be a catalyst for the issues we've been dealing with. But for so many other things, we've created a network here that we can all benefit from.
The way we look after our staff and the way we respect the future workforce is really important.
So there were a lot of different organizations from all of those countries that came together at the Forum for Education to discuss what action items they could all do moving forward. And so really the primary result of that was the creation of Together for Racing International as an organization. And so I'm going to play one more clip so that you guys can kind of get an idea of what TfRI looks like today. So that's just a really fun promo video that kind of shows you what is going on in all of these different countries. And so we all continue to meet bi-monthly to talk about what everyone is doing in the space of education, what we can do to continue to progress those initiatives together, how we can share ideas. The Mentorship Program is one idea that since that kicked off, I've had several other program leaders from other countries reach out to say, hey, can we replicate this? How can we work together on this? And so I'm actually going to invite Katie Lamonica to the stage to talk about a program that has come out of Together for Racing International that showcases how a broader, more impactful program can be created from all of these different countries and organizations working together.
Which one do I talk into? There's a lot here. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Denise. My name is Katie Lamonica. As she said, I am the charities manager for Godolphin, USA. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with Godolphin. We are the largest thoroughbred racing operation in the world. We are in 6 different countries and based in Dubai, of course, where the boss is, Sheikh Mohammed. And I just really have the most amazing job of figuring out new ways to foster growth and make change within the thoroughbred industry. We tackle things from aftercare to workforce to education. We look at a global scale. There is one of me in all 6 countries, and we come together. Sheikh Mohammed is very involved in a lot of the initiatives that we do internationally, and then we look at our own communities and figure out ways to go in and make change and it's a really wonderful job. I get to work with great people like Denise and Hallie and Kate. And what I can say is you all saw some of the videos from the TfRI, those 3 days in Newmarket were very powerful. Kate was there with me. I was able to take a team from the U.S. You saw Price Bell up there. Remy Balick was there. And it was a very important 3 days to all come together in the same room and say, we have a lot of challenges, and we just could not get over all the similarities that we had together. And so we started getting to work and figuring out what could we do to collaborate. I am not big on inventing new things when we already have existing initiatives. It's more figuring out ways to collaborate together and just bring people together. And that is what Godolphin does with the forums that we host. We bring people together and say, okay, we're all in the same room. Let's get after it. Let's figure out what we're going to do. So TfRI was born out of that forum, and we are very excited that Amplify is more of our domestic arm here in the U.S. And we are really excited to unveil a new program that TfRI has fostered, and that is the TfRI Sister Cities Student Exchange Program. I don't know if you all are familiar with sister cities. So in Lexington, Kentucky is a sister city to 4 other cities. The Sister Cities program actually started back in the 1950s with Lexington and Deauville, France, getting together. The Thoroughbred is what brought them together, the horse, but they started realizing there was so much travel between the 2 cities that culturally, through education, they could partner together and become sister cities and just, create more cultural experiences for that. Soon, County Kildare was added in Ireland, and Newmarket, England, and now Japan has been added as well. So Remy Balick had the idea to bring the racing schools and graduates of those racing schools together to potentially apply for exchange programs to go and work in new countries. This is brand new. This is a pilot program that started this year. And it's for kiddos that have graduated, students rather, ages 18 to 25 that have graduated from either the BCTC Equine program, which is our racing school, that's in Lexington, Kentucky, formerly NARA, which was the North American Racing Academy. It is now BCTC Equine, which is based in Lexington, run by Remy, with RACE in Ireland, the British Racing School in England, and then AFASEC, which is in France. So graduates of those programs can apply for an exchange in one of the 4 countries. And we actually have just finished our first exchange. We had a girl from France, and she spent 6 weeks in Lexington at Castleton Lions doing a stint on a breeding farm, and now we have 5 new students that will hopefully be doing exchanges in the next 9 months. So it's an exciting opportunity. This all came about through our collaborations of TfRI, and it's just a great way to offer kids the ability to go abroad and develop more skills, meet new people. As we all know in this room, this is a very big industry, but it's not. It's actually very small. And when you travel thousands of miles away, you're going to run into all the people that you know. And this is just a great way to create those networks that help bring us together and make us stronger, but also provide these opportunities for these students. So it's exciting. We're hoping to add Japan and Australia next year to the program. If you all need any more information on it, please contact any of us or Remy Balick at BCTC Equine in Lexington. And I think that's all I'm needed for, correct? Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Change our screens up here really quickly. While I know I'm really loud, but I also want the video to be able to hear us. But while she's changing that out, thank you, Katie, and really to Team Godolphin altogether. I think we'll harp on this most of the rest of the evening. It's so important to facilitate that collaboration across our very international industry. There are really many great things happening around the world. It's just such an asset to be able to share and collaborate with our peers around the globe. So now you've heard now about Amplify, about what TfRI is doing, and hearing from the people who are really helping to organize those initiatives. But now we're going to have Denise lead a discussion about Amplify's mentorship program. So this time, I couldn't help myself. You get to hear from the horse's mouth, straight from the horse's mouth, on how the program has worked, both from a mentor's perspective and from a mentee's perspective. So joining us for this topic are Tom Law and Timothy Lateau, a recent mentorship pairing that Amplify put together. I imagine many of you in here know Tom, obviously bit by the racing bug in his early years, being from Saratoga, and got his career kicked off. And now I might get a little hick on this. It's the Saratogian. It's a hard word for me to say, I'm not going to lie. But where he covered racing seasonally in upstate New York. And of course, he would go on to an award-winning career as a writer and editor for the Thoroughbred Times magazine in Lexington, before coming back here to the Saratoga Special. I have had several friends. I'm based in Lexington. I have several friends working for farms there. Denise being one of them, who had an internship with Tom and the Clancy brothers at the Saratoga Special. And I would say that many of them would credit your team, Tom, at the Saratoga Special with cultivating their love of the sport, their excitement for the sport, and helping them along their way to their career in this industry. So kudos to you for all you've done. Timothy Lateau is a rising senior at Marquette University in Milwaukee, double majoring in journalism and digital media. At Marquette, he is the executive producer of the television newscast at the school's student media organization, Marquette Wire. He also hosts a radio show about horse racing and motorsports. Very well done. I didn't do half of that much while I was in college, so well done to you. Timothy fell in love with horse racing through TV coverage. Again, right? We all have those points where we got involved in this business. And he also grew up very close to Arlington Park, just about 20 minutes from his hometown, which, may it rest in peace. What a beautiful, beautiful place, and what a great place to fall in love with the sport. He received his first opportunity in the industry as a mentee in Amplify's mentorship program. So we're seeing, these concepts that we're talking about tonight directly in action here. Through the mentorship program, Timothy has also become a producer and a co-host of Amplify Horse Racing's podcast, which I had the pleasure to be a guest on 2 weeks ago, last week. And he also works for Tom as an intern at the Saratoga Special this summer. I think we were speaking earlier and you said you have to leave right before Travers, which is just gut-wrenching, but I'm sure you will be back. And Timothy aspires to be an on-air broadcaster for horse racing, and doing so hopes to create new fans and deepen the passion of existing fans. So even a young man sitting here before us now also wants to share his love and passion for this industry. It's easy to say it's pretty an infectious industry altogether. So please welcome everybody up here, our panel, Denise, Tom, and Timothy.
Thanks, Hallie. So we're all going to be standing and kind of shuffling back and forth to share the mic, but these two are such a great example of what we want the mentorship program to be able to produce. We want it to be able to be used as a prerequisite or even kind of a bit of a test drive for somebody who could eventually become an amazing employee, but at the same time create an opportunity for someone who might not have had the chance to get as in-depth into the thoroughbred industry as they would have liked without having had that formal introduction. So Timothy and Tom were part of our pilot year last year for the mentorship program, where we took on 12 mentors and mentees to test it out, take on some feedback, see what worked, see what didn't work, with the hopes that eventually, after those 3 months, those mentors and mentees would keep in touch, and it could eventually lead to jobs or internships. And that is exactly what has happened. So I'm going to scoot you over to this side so I can kind of shuffle out of the way when you guys are answering the questions. But I'm also a mentee of Tom's. I feel like we're always kind of like once a mentee, always a mentee. Like you always have that mentality of continuing to learn. And
you don't call me as much anymore for advice, though, so you're on your way.
Dang! Wow, that is harsh.
You got new mentors now.
Yeah, the mentor group definitely does grow as you get older. You add to your, kind of becomes a herd. But I want to know about your mentors, Tom. Who are some of your mentors and what made them good mentors?
Sure. So I was fortunate growing up here in Saratoga. I ran on the cross country team and the track team, and husband and wife were coaches of ours, and they were just great leaders of us. You know, they challenged us. You know, they held us accountable. You know, and they rewarded us when we did well. You know, they were strict, but at the same time, very kind and very passionate about what they did. And I've tried to use all those things in what I do now, leading, you know, interns or staff. You know, I was a boss at Thoroughbred. At times I had a lot more people that worked under me that weren't necessarily interns, but staff. And I treat everybody the same way, whether it's the, you know, person delivering the papers or somebody that's covering the Travers. You know, like Sean and Joe don't really take any orders from me per se, but they do from time to time. But you know, that was one. And then as I got a little older, Michael Veach was a writer at the Saratogian, which all natives of Saratoga are called Saratogians, so that's where that name comes from, Hallie. But it's also the paper here, and he's the historian here at the museum now. He was a teacher of mine, and then he was a colleague. He was a writer. He kind of covered racing seasonally. But he was very professional, you know, and held himself to a really high standard. And he was very patient with me, taught me a lot, and just taught me how to go about my normal course of business in a professional way, and not act like a doofus like some of my colleagues can at times. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I guess it is to call somebody a doofus. You're insulting them, but. And then as I've gotten older, I had really good mentors at Thoroughbred Times, Mark Simon, Don Clippinger, John Sparkman, guys that have been in the industry for a long, long time. And colleagues as well. John Harrell was a colleague of mine who passed away. He was a great mentor of mine. And now Sean and Joe are mentors of mine. A friend of mine used to joke, you need to go work with Sean Clancy. He would be a really good mentor to you. And I was like, he's not going to be a mentor to me. He's my colleague. He's my friend, you know. But he you know, he inspires me, and I hopefully inspire them. I mean, Joe made some comments this spring when he won an award that Sean and I kind of inspire him. So I think that's all part of the mentoring process, is kind of inspiring people, but also teaching and fostering and, you know, praising at the same time.
That's a good point, because I feel like a lot of times when we think of mentors, our brain automatically goes to someone that we work for, and a mentor can come from a lot of different places, whether it is a friend who's kind of taking you under their wing in a certain way, or a work colleague. And you have mentored many people, Tom. You've got a lot of amazing graduates. I'll call them graduates of the Saratoga Special, because they oftentimes go on and do amazing things, and you know, we always know we have something in common when we can say, well, I interned for the special. Oh, I did too. So what was kind of your or what is your mentality that you keep in mind when you are mentoring new young people?
Well, as you said, it's a great fraternity, if you will, of past graduates, and it's really something that Sean and Joe created when they created the paper back in 2001. And I'm just fortunate to kind of help carry it on since 2013. You know, we really want people that work for us that are passionate about racing and to really have just kind of a good attitude about life. And we try to instill that in them and help them be part of the team. And one way that we kind of, I think, get the respect from them, and we respect them as well, as we all do everything. You know, we do everything from delivering the papers to putting the paper racks out to covering the Travers or covering the Whitney. You know, and we give the interns a lot of responsibility. We throw a lot at them in a short amount of time, as Timothy could say. I was with him on opening day, and I was like, all right, we're going to be here for about half the day, kind of teach you about how to cover the races, and then I got other stuff to do. So you're on your own after that. So we give them a long rope to hopefully not hang themselves with. We've had some that haven't answered the bell over the years, but not many. You know, and we're really trying to identify the right candidates when we start the process. And you know, that's how Timothy came along, and that's how you came along. I mean, Denise is one of our great success stories. You know, I can remember talking to her on the phone and Sean and Joe just kind of give me the leeway to just hire whoever I want to hire. And I said, I got this girl from North Dakota who's going to come on board. And they're like, North Dakota? I said, you got to trust me on this one. It's going to be great. And it worked out. Obviously, it worked out great. Look at where she's going now. We're all going to work for Denise one day, and we're excited about that. So I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did.
Yeah. I'll also add, I was a little bit afraid of Tom when I first started at the special. I think I was just afraid of everybody in general. I was just so in awe of Saratoga and all the people I got to meet. But I think the greatest piece of advice you gave me was, if something doesn't scare you a little bit or make you a little bit nervous, you probably don't care about it enough. So
That's right.
that has definitely stuck with me. But Timothy, I know that Hallie mentioned a little bit in your bio that you became interested in racing from watching it on TV, but I'd love to know about your story, about how you initially were exposed to the thoroughbred industry and took it from there.
Yeah, so I remember, really vividly. I was, 6 years old. It was the 2007 Kentucky Derby. Street Sense won it, last to first up the fence with Calvin Burrell. And, after the race, his interview with Donna Brothers was, really emotional. And it was my first horse race that I've ever watched. But, I realized how, what a monumental moment that was in his career. And, I was so excited, then to watch the rest of the Triple Crown, me and my dad and the rest of my family. And, every year, I just watched more and more racing. And I remember, we got the Chicago Tribune too. So, newspapers definitely play a role in that. And, seeing the field come out, Derby week or any of the Triple Crown races, or honestly any mention of a horse race in the newspaper, I saved that newspaper. So it's definitely been such a long time that I've been a fan for. And I remember the first thing after school was over, I'd log on to my laptop and read Blood Horse, Horse Racing Nation, Daily Racing Form, Pollock Report, you name it. So I'd say that's how kind of my interests stemmed, especially. But I remember my first trip to Arlington Park back in 2009 when I was, I want to say 8 years old. My family went, and seeing the races in person too, there's nothing else like it, and just seeing all the activity at the track, and from that point on, spending so many summer days there at Arlington Park meant a lot. And I tell this to everyone that I meet, Arlington Million Day, that was our big day, when all the big names in racing would be there, from really around the world. It was truly an international event. And, I remember waking up, every Million Day, and I tell people, that was like Christmas morning to me, so that's how much it meant to get to be there and to see those superstars on their biggest day of racing as well. So I would say, through media coverage of horse racing and then also Arlington Park as well, those are the two biggest things that factored into me becoming a fan.
That's funny. I was definitely a horse racing article newspaper hoarder as well, and I'm I guess I'll say a little proud to say there's still a tub under my bed at home of every single horse racing article newspaper clipping from about 2003 to probably 2014. So anyways, I'll probably keep those for a long time. But how did being able to be involved in the mentorship program, Timothy, help to deepen your involvement in the industry?
Yeah, well, obviously now I do have a job in the industry. I should clarify too that I don't think should be anyone's goal to be hired by their mentor, but that's something that I've been very fortunate to do. But I do think that a mentor can help connect you to get your foot in the door in a certain spot. But I definitely became more interested in it after talking with Tom, starting from last summer through the fall, and I really became excited about thinking about how to go about covering the races and thinking about what questions to ask, the connections of the horses, and just kind of the stories that you can write or produce for a broadcast. So I think that the mentorship program, Tom definitely helped me understand more of my role as a journalist covering racing, in more of like a specific way, where it's very different from any other sport. And so definitely, those conversations with Tom, having them every month or so, we talk for, an hour or two, and there would be a lot, that he would tell me about just what his job was like and the daily, weekly, or monthly plans that he had as editor of ST Publishing.
So I think you kind of already segued into my next question in what actually makes a good mentor. I think that's a really important question to actually get from mentees. What do you want to get from your mentor? Because a lot of us have in mind, we think we're being helpful by doing certain things, but as someone who is still learning and gaining knowledge in the sport, what makes a good mentor to you?
Yeah, well, I think the best qualities about Tom that make him a great mentor. He's open and he's honest, and he's talked about different things that he's covered about in horse racing. Different events, working for different publications, and he was open and honest about like his career path. That I could kind of see how my career path might play out as well, and talking about standing out as well. Is really important. There's so many different outlets, media outlets covering horse racing, but making your content unique and stand out, and something that any fan can connect to, is certainly something that that Tom has shown me, about being a good mentor. He was, always very generous with his time too. We always planned to meet for an hour or so every month, but we always talked more than that. And like Anissa's hope too was for the mentors and mentees to continue to meet after the program had ended. Tom and I continued to do so as well. And any Zoom or phone call that I got on with Tom, I was always super excited to talk about him, because he always had great advice and just his openness and honesty to share what was on his mind currently and his thought process too as he became a more thorough journalist, and as he worked his way up through the industry. It was really just, it's been a remarkable relationship that I've been really fortunate to have, and something that I hope that, I hope that all of you out there in the audience, have someone in your life that, is open and honest with you and makes a difference in your profession, whatever that might be. I think, and if you can go and do that for someone else, that can really change their life. So I hope that you consider that.
So Tom, I'm going to have you wrap it up by giving everyone advice on, how can someone be a good mentor? You've been an amazing mentor, but also a good mentee, considering that you've mentored so many people. I want to get your perspective on what makes a good mentee.
Well, I can speak to Timothy, as a recent mentee. He was really good at keeping the schedule, probably better than I was. He would set the schedule when we would talk, and then he would remind me that we were going to talk, because I'm notoriously absent-minded at certain times of the year. For about 10 months of the year, I'm really good, razor sharp, but for 2, so July and August, I'm a little bit lax. But so to answer the second part of the question, what makes a good mentee? I mean, Todd Pletcher has some great advice. Basically, do you have any advice for somebody in the thoroughbred industry? I think he says, show up. And I like that, show up. But for us, we want you to show up with a good attitude, show up with an attitude to willing to do anything, be willing to accept constructive criticism, which, is not always easy for a lot of people to do. And I think young people, it's sometimes a little bit hard. And just have passion. I don't care if you're mucking stalls or you're writing stories or you're trying to run the Hall of Fame or you're, the mayor of Saratoga. You need to care about what you're doing, first and foremost. And if you don't, then maybe you need to find something else to do. But, just and stay focused. Keep your focus on what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you're doing an internship at the Saratoga Special, you are A, helping us produce the content, but also B, kind of making connections, and C, kind of trying to move forward using those connections to the next goal. So that's a good little bit of advice for that. As far as what makes people a good mentor, I try every day to be a good mentor, and sometimes I feel like I do a pretty good job, and sometimes I feel like I do a bad job. But the same things apply, is to really be accountable to the people that work for you. And I think one way that really helps you get respect from your people that work for you and with you is to, you know, go to battle with them, whether it's, you know, putting out the papers at 5 o'clock in the morning and then turning around and doing a stable tour at 6 and then, you know, writing a story and then covering the races all day. They see you, they know that what you're doing, and you know, being a mentor, carry yourself with professionalism, you know, be on time, speak clearly, give really good instructions, I think, and set goals. Like going all the way back to my cross-country coaches, every year we had goals, and we stayed focused on those goals. And again, that brings back to the accountability factor. But also be open-minded at the same time that the people that you're dealing with are very different from you most of the time, but also very different than each other. So you can't treat them all the same way. You know, you hear a lot of stuff in the thoroughbred industry about he's in the program, he's in this program. Well, there's not a program for people because everyone's different. Denise is very different than Timothy, and Timothy's very different than Gabby Gaudette and Travis Stone and all these other folks that have interned for us in the past. And they also have very different goals. So you need to sort of set them on the course to where they want to go. Like he's interested in broadcasting, but at the same time, I know nothing about broadcasting, but I know that he knows a lot about horse racing, or he wants to know a lot of, he's trying to learn. So I'm trying to give him as much as I can to learn more that will help him down the road. So, you know, that's in the teaching part, I guess. You know, being a mentor is to be a good teacher. My mother was a teacher. I've been a coach. You know, and I guess now I'm kind of a coach and a teacher at the same time. Sean and Joe call me Coach Tom all the time. So I'm still coaching, just not on the athletic field.
I think a great takeaway from that, I mean, all of it's a great takeaway, really, but how much you can learn from each other, even if you have, you know, a mentor and a mentee, and you might be thinking of the mentor teaching the mentee, there's just as much that can be learned from the mentees as well. So we can all be lifelong students, but I do encourage you all to consider mentorship. And thank you, both of you, so much. Good luck, Timothy, the rest of the summer with the Saratoga Special. If I could go back and be an intern again, I would totally do it. I actually really dream of being like one of the paper delivery people. That seems like the most fun job in the world. So.
Well, I mean, we're getting to the end of the season, and they start to go back to college. So we always have openings. We have all positions available basically the last 2 weeks of the meet.
As long as we can call it the amplified paper delivery person.
Oh, put your stickers right on the golf carts and everything. Yeah, let's go.
Man, sweet. I'm good. Let's do it. So I'm now well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to hand it back off to Hallie Hardy. We're just trying to build anticipation for what Hallie Hardy is going to say.
Good times. All right. Well, thank you all very much for sharing those experiences. You know, I think our industry sometimes can get a bad rap. I've heard it said from peers before that you have to know somebody in this industry to be able to build a career. And, you know, there may be some truth to that in some ways, but I think it's really unfair because I've found that people across our industry have really been very open to providing their insights to young people and, if possible, providing opportunities as well. I guess you also have to be willing to, you know, show up at 7 a.m. and muck stalls, but they're also then willing to share, which is so important. But so if you are one of those people here tonight who are open to sharing your experiences with young people, as Denise said, please do consider submitting an application to be a mentor. You can do so through their website. If you are or know a young person, you know, who's looking to build a career in our game and our industry, please encourage them to visit the website. They can apply through the website as well to become a mentee. And again, it's kind of that overarching theme of the night, right? It's about connecting the pieces as best as we can for young people We've kind of talked a little bit about how it's confusing, it's a bit intimidating to get into this industry, so we're trying to make it as streamlined and as easy as possible, and we hope that you will join us in our cause there. I am particularly excited to introduce our next guest, Miss Laurie Mays. So far, we've really covered ways for young people and newcomers to connect with our industry, and tried to cover areas and how you guys can help young people get connected. That's obviously an incredibly important piece, right? That outreach has to happen. But equally important is considering what type of workplace our industry offers once we do get newcomers in and connected to our industry. You know, are we progressing and adapting to the workplace, which also continues to evolve? And are we doing so in ways that encourage new people to consider working in our industry? Are we providing opportunities for managers and leaders to learn how they can evolve and adapt in really tangible ways that will enable them to better attract and retain staff and still continue to operate successfully? You know, I think I would posit, so I know this might be a little controversial, but at least comparatively to some other industries, historically we have not done that well as an industry. You know, we've really relied heavily on the passion for the horse, which is it's a great thing too. I mean, that's why I'm here today, because I love horses. But we are now competing with other jobs and industries that allow them to be passionate about something and still earn, you know, a comfortable living wage, and, you know, to have things like time off and 5-day work weeks, if you will. So we have to start competing in more compelling ways. And the question is, how do we do so successfully? Fortunately, our next speaker, Laurie Mays, is going to speak to us on that. So she is the Agriculture and Equine Talent Pipeline Manager, which is an incredible job title, for the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, which is a role she began in 2018. So she works cooperatively between the equine and agriculture industries to bridge the workforce gap in Kentucky, and really has a great background before coming into this job. Before her time at the Chamber, she's held roles as Operations Manager and the Director of Youth and Community Education at the Kentucky Horse Park, which is an incredible facility in Lexington. She also developed a nationally recognized equine program in conjunction with the United States Pony Club that lives at the Locust Trace Agri-Science Center, which is a career and technical education school. It's part of the Fayette County Public School system. So students will go to Locust Trace and learn everything from general horse management to land management. So it's essentially a trade school that really is connected to equine and to agriculture. With her experience between those things and really being able to understand the industry through those endeavors, Laurie now works statewide with employers, educators, opportunity populations, and other agriculture stakeholders to develop talent pipelines to ensure a consistent, skilled labor pool. I've been really fortunate to spend time at one of Laurie's Thoroughbred collaborative meetings, which brings together various industry professionals for discussion and collaboration, hence the name. But I've really seen firsthand the impact Laurie has in empowering employers to provide the best workplace possible. You know, while that kind of change takes time, right? We're not going to snap our fingers and all of a sudden be able to offer 5-day work weeks. But Laurie, in her short time in this job, has really been able to make impactful strides in our industry, both with managers and with leaders, but also in her methods of attracting new people to the workforce. So please join me in welcoming Laurie Mays.
It was quite the introduction, Hallie. Thank you. Well, thank you. So as Hallie said, and it has been said throughout, sorry, I'm getting used to Denise's computer, the presentation today, my job really focuses on the employer side of things, and looking at how the industry, both racing and non-racing, can really bolster the enthusiasm that individuals have to come into this industry, specifically for working. So I'm going to leave you, or start, I guess, with this very fun thing here that really kind of shows a lot of the funny parts of our industry, but also the very true parts of our industry and what a lot of times our employers are dealing with. So to give you a little bit of a background of my position currently, the State Chamber of Commerce in Kentucky, so a lot of what I'll talk about tonight is Kentucky-based because that is where we're specifically working, but it is programming and initiatives that can be scaled across the country and in different nations. I'm also part of the TfRI project, and so that's been really informational and insightful to be able to share what we're doing here in the U.S., but also learning from other countries throughout the industry. How we kind of got into this is all of you guys know that we have a workforce issue, not just in the equine and agriculture industries, but across the nation. And so the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce basically was working with a lot of employers across the state in various industries, and they kept talking about this workforce issue, but nothing was really being done about it. So at the time, the CEO of the Kentucky Chamber finally said, we either need to figure something out, or we need to stop talking about it because I'm tired of listening. And so he really kind of brainstormed what we now know as the Kentucky Chamber Foundation, and within that, the Workforce Center. And so there are actually 5 of me across the state. 3 of them are regionally based and deal in all industries from healthcare to manufacturing to transportation. My position is specifically for equine and agriculture across the state, which I used to have the cool job, and then we just hired somebody in January who is now the distilling project manager. So he now has the cool job in the distilling industry with bourbon. And we are working specifically with employers to help them overcome their workforce challenges. So as most of you guys know, and we don't really have to go into this very in depth, but how did we get here? This workforce challenge that we're facing as a nation is not something that happened overnight, and therefore some of the solutions and hopefully the turning around of that workforce crisis is also not going to happen overnight. So as you know, the history of the workforce in agriculture and equine was very familiar in terms of they was a grow your own type of industry. People grew up in the industry. The U.S. was more connected to agriculture back in the day, decades ago, and people, even if they didn't work in it, if their families didn't work in it, they were at least knowledgeable about some of the intricacies of the agriculture and the equine industries. And that's just not the case anymore. So we have less and less people that are exposed to the industry, specifically the racing industry, than they were previously. And so it is the industry partially's responsibility to then be able to bring that industry to people who have never had exposure to it, which is a lot of what's been talked about already tonight. We have heavily relied as an industry on guest workers, and with the light of how things are specifically during the pandemic, but also politically and how things are in the visa situation, guest workers aren't available as readily as they have been in the past. And that's a lot of how our industry has utilized those individuals specifically in the lower level positions. The nature of the work, it's kind of been alluded to now, is that when you're bringing in these people who have not been exposed or grown up in the industry, a lot of them don't understand that it's more than a job, it's a lifestyle. And so when they get into it, it's very difficult for them to understand and to kind of integrate into that without being properly prepared. And then there's a lot of misunderstanding, and the public perception of the industry is not always accurate. And so we are constantly, as an industry, fighting that battle simply from misinformation that a lot of people get from very random sources. So how are we kind of looking at those reasons behind the change? We are now seeing it. Oh, apparently this one is coming on one at a time. There's a stalled growth of the workforce. There's really interesting information out there now that it's not just what we consider workforce participation, so those that are able and willing to work. There's 2 open positions for every 1 American right now. And so even if we filled all those positions with every single person in the U.S. between the ages of 16 and 65 that could work, we still have open positions. The population is simply not there anymore. And so how do we work on that? There's high turnover rates in our industry for various reasons, which we'll go into a little bit in a few minutes. And how do we look at that as an opportunity? There is a short work life within our industry, so there's not as many people that are what we consider riding for the brand anymore, where they're working for a particular company or employer for decades at a time. So they are going to go to what is beneficial to them career-wise, which is great in a way, but is not historically how our industry has worked. And then lack of community engagement and education. So for an industry that is getting farther and farther away from the general American household, how can we as an industry look at ways to engage our community and other populations? So we have done a lot, as Anise said, collaboratively with employers. So we are not racing specific within my position, so we have brought together employers that have similar businesses. So we have collaborations between thoroughbred farms, non-thoroughbred farms, so more sport horses, show horses, combined driving, etc., veterinary clinics and ambulatory practices, transportation companies, both ground and air, and anything else, if we were working with trainers on the backsides, et cetera, that the industry deems that we need to address. So we have those collaboratives within those industry subsectors, and one of those that has come out of one of those collaboratives from our Thoroughbred Farm collaboratives, we have actually started an employee collaborative. So we have representatives from 9 farms now in the central Kentucky area that are representing both grooms, division managers, and night watchmen. So they are representing their positions, not their farms. And we talk to them about different entities that the employer collaborative attendees have brought up. So they ask us to address that with the employees. We have kind of a safe space for employees to discuss difficult topics in the industry, and then we report back to the employers about ways that we can improve the industry. So this collaborative, the Thoroughbred Farm Collaborative, has kind of seen a couple of challenges that keep spiking, and one of them is demand for low-skilled versus high-skilled jobs. Most of the jobs, not all, but a lot of the jobs that they really struggle with filling and or have very high turnover rates are their more entry-level positions. And how do they deal with that constant turnover when they really just need a warm body there? So we've worked a lot on creating career pathways. That's not something that, as we talked earlier, a lot of our managers have gotten to the positions that they have because they're great horsemen or great horsewomen, and they've been in the industry for a long time. They have a lot of knowledge, but they may not have been properly trained on how to manage staff. And so they are not always strategically good at helping people advance their careers, whether it's in their farms or their operations or within the industry. So we have helped the industry really identify career pathways, that you are not just hiring a groom, you are hiring a future barn manager or division manager or a future, veterinary technician, et cetera. And so we're really helping them to understand what are the positions and what are the pathways that people can take in our industry, so that you are recruiting them with the knowledge that they are going to move throughout their career within that same industry. And then how do you get them there? So what is the industry's responsibility to help those individuals move from one position to another? So we are really trying to create actionable steps for upward movement of people in different positions. So one of the other challenges that I'm sure all of us have dealt with at one time or another is competitive pay, benefits, work-life balance. There's a very distinct difference in the last decade or so of people entering the workforce and what is important to them, and how, as employers, they can support the workforce that is with them now and start to have that mind and culture shift that is going to support their employees that they have. And so we really help our employers by connecting them with resources or other sources of information about being creative. How can you be a standout employer amongst a sea of others when you need to really listen to what your employees are wanting? So we have found that sometimes there are very unique benefits that people want with gas prices the way they are now, although thankfully they're falling a little bit. We've seen gas cards be really helpful, Christmas or other holiday bonuses, stallion shares at particular farms, pet daycare. So I always tell this interesting story about one of the vet clinics I work with. They hire a lot of young women at their clinic. That's kind of the nature of the veterinary industry and the equine industry right now. And they often come for a year or two at this clinic, and they are living alone. They're young women that are not married, they don't have family, and one of the big things is that they really missed having a pet. They worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, and then they would go home to an empty apartment or an empty house, and that was something that oftentimes made them look outside of that veterinary industry or that particular clinic because of their work schedules, because they couldn't have pets. So that clinic was very creative in they are currently creating a pet daycare within the site. So they basically are now going to allow their staff to bring dogs and cats right now. They have not said you can bring iguanas or anything interesting, but they really listen to their staff. So basically what their staff is going to be able to do is bring their pet to work with them. They can see them on their lunch hour or their breaks, etc., and then they take that pet home with them. And so it's a quality of life thing that they can accommodate because of the campus of their clinic, and it is somewhat easy for them to make manifest for their employees. So those are the kind of creative things that we try and help employers work through that make them different than some of their other kind of competitors. So we then look at, I think there's 4 of these, the need for employers to adapt to a changing workforce. So this kind of goes into the first 2. The upcoming workforce is unique. They are not all about pay, although they're obviously wanting to have a living wage, like everyone. But they really center on a work-life balance, particularly in the flexibility of their time. And so being able to continually understand the needs of their employees is really important for our employers. And we really tell them, however you want to do it, be able to listen to the people that work for you. So whether you have monthly meetings, whether you have an advisory board of your staff, whether you do monthly surveys, however it is, we encourage our employers to really listen, because oftentimes they will come to meetings and say, well, I think they want this, or I think they're upset because of this, but they oftentimes don't ask, and so not always are they incorrect, but sometimes they are. So we really encourage them to encourage a culture at their facilities to have that safe space for employees to be able to voice their concerns, but also their needs and their wants. So that is very important, and a lot of it is changing kind of the culture of how our employers manage their staff and or their business structure. So there's also a need for industry-specific soft skills. So we talk about this a lot, especially at the middle school and high school level, but also at the post-secondary and kind of trade school level, but also anybody that is getting into the industry. And the mentorship program is a great way to immerse you into the industry that you're wanting to get into, because as we start to target populations that are not growing up in or having extreme exposure into the industry, it's sometimes hard to adjust to that lifestyle and that way of living. And the expectations of the industry. So really being able to educate the general public, and Amplify, TfRI, and some other organizations are perfect examples of being able to educate at a younger age of what the industry has to offer, but also the realities of what you are going to be doing professionally in the industry. So one of the things that we have seen really kind of take off across the board in our collaboratives in all facets of the industry is the engagement of opportunity populations. And that may be a little bit of a new term, but what we consider opportunity populations are Americans who have had limited access to either education or professional opportunities, and or who face hurdles for becoming employed or staying employed. And so that can include a lot of different populations, from those who have been formerly incarcerated, those who are receiving treatment or in long-term recovery, some substance use disorders, lower socioeconomic classes, homelessness, veterans, et cetera. So that, depending on who you talk to, those populations can be very broad, but it is really specifically in the equine and agriculture industries, not populations that we have strategically targeted. Now, that's not to say that employers haven't hired these individuals before, but very few of the employers that I work with, at least, they're like, yeah, we probably have some of those people on staff, but I don't really know because we don't ask, or we don't really try and target them when we're doing recruitment. So there's a couple of programs that I want to highlight, and these programs are ones that really are scalable across the country, that we've worked very hard in Kentucky to kind of figure out the model for, and then we're hoping to replicate across the industry, across the country. One of those is Department of Corrections, and how this kind of worked. We work at the federal level with prisons in Kentucky. We are working to scale that to our local county jail systems too. So one of the things that I have learned is that Department of Corrections and federal prisons are very, very different, at least in Kentucky, with county jails. The rules and management of them is completely different. And so what we have learned in one, we're hoping to scale to another and in different parts. But this came about because the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation has a program at a facility called Blackburn Correctional Complex in Lexington, and it's right on I-64. If you guys have ever been to Lexington, you've probably passed it. There's a huge sign on the interstate, and there's these gorgeous fields with horses, and if you were like me, I'd lived there for like 6 years, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty farm, but I had no idea it did. Well, it's a prison, and it's a very pretty prison, but it is a prison. And so when we started really talking to our collaborative members, specifically our thoroughbred farms and our trainers on the track, we recognized that these individuals, and it is an all-male facility, were going through a program, about a 6 to 7 month program, that taught equine skills. And it was not just equine skills, but educational components. So they were learning nutrition and horse health and first aid and all of these different things. And then when their sentence was up and they were released, they just went into the world, and the industry wasn't capturing them at all. And so we really realized that these guys were coming out with some really great skills, and we had an industry that was really struggling for staff, and how do we partner with them? So we were able to work with the warden, who is an amazing human being, and she really helped us to get our foot in the door with Department of Corrections, and so to sometimes circumvent some rules to make things work. And so what we have done originally, and this started in 2019 before the pandemic, is that we wanted to be able to interview the guys before they were released so they could have a job when they came out. And Department of Corrections said, absolutely not, you can't come. So she said, okay, well, let's start a training program where we can work on job skills with the guys, and we'll use the employers to teach them. And so we started bringing employers in to do job interview skills with them, resume writing, how you should dress for an interview in the equine industry, et cetera. And we started doing mock interviews and things like that. So she went back to them about 6 weeks later, and she said, hey, you know, we really want to interview. And they said no. And she said, well, we're already doing it in our class, so we're just going to do it for real now. And so she was very instrumental in kind of working the system a little bit. But the interesting thing about this program is we have a very specific way of communication now that it works with the reentry coordinator there. And our goal for all of these guys that come out is that they have stable housing, they have transportation, and they have a job when they walk out the door. And so we help to facilitate wherever they want to go in the state, and whatever they want to do within the industry. We help to bring employers to them. So right now they're doing Zoom interviews, and then it is our goal for them to start work within 48 hours of their release. And so we've had really good success with this program. We are now scaling it. Blackburn Correctional is actually a training facility, so they have a masonry program, a mechanics program, et cetera. So we have branched beyond the equine program at this point, and we are trying to place all gentlemen that are coming out of Blackburn at any given time. So that is a population that, again, a lot of our employers have said that they probably hire them, but they don't know that they hire them, and so now we're strategically working with them. So another one is Fostering Success. This is also another program that is through, it's subsidized and run through DCBS, which is our Department for Community-Based Services, which is part of our foster care program in the state of Kentucky. And it is what they started 2 years ago as a career exploration program, and it is geared towards individuals that are aging out of the foster care system that are not adopted, so they're 18 to 23. And they really wanted to pair these individuals with employers in desirable employment opportunities as part of a paid internship. So it started out as a 3-month program with a possibility to extend if the employer and the student agree to do that. And the equine industry has gotten involved in this program. The really great thing for the employer side of it is that the pay for the internship is subsidized by DCBS, so the employer doesn't actually pay the individual, the DCBS staff does. They are covered under state insurance. They oftentimes provide transportation for the youth, and so really all the employer has to do is be a mentor to them. They are also able to have connections with career coaches and other entities that really kind of help that individual. And so that is another population that our employers have really gotten involved with, which has been really neat. And then the last one we're going to look at is apprenticeships. So apprenticeships have been around for a really long time in various industries, but it is not something that the equine and agriculture industry is really kind of centered on. And it really is on the job skill training. So it is specific, and there's apprenticeships in a lot of different assets of areas of the equine industry, and it is more of a model and a structure for hands-on learning, which is what the equine industry does anyway. So this really just gives our employers a model to follow in terms of skills and knowledge that these individuals need to gain from their experiences. And with these programs comes a lot of financial assistance, as well as incentives for employers to hire and have apprentices. So depending on what type of apprenticeship they're going into depends on the length of the programs. And so there's a lot of really neat things that are going on, and these are ways that employers and the community can get involved to be able to bolster the workforce within the industry. And we've had to really kind of have a mind shift for a lot of our employers to think outside the box in what is normally a very traditional industry. And we've had a lot of employers that have really stepped up to the plate and have made some really neat movements to better their facilities, but also to really engage different populations that they hadn't strategically done before, which is really neat to see. So this is my contact information. I am based at the chamber office. However, I work probably 60% from my home outside of the Lexington area, and then I'm out at facilities all the time. So that's the neat thing about my background as well, is that since I was in the industry for quite some time and then was on the education side of it, and now I'm on the employer side of it, I can help kind of all entities understand what the other are thinking. So if any of you guys have ever worked in education, when I work with a lot of my employers, they're like, yes, we're gonna do this, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, well in like a year that's gonna happen because the university has to do all of these things. And they don't always understand that. And in education and workforce doesn't always understand the equine industry. So it's been very helpful to kind of be that connector. So we're really excited about where everything is going, and we're to the point now, obviously because I'm in Saratoga, that we are working to scale a lot of these programs outside of Kentucky, and so that we are able to better benefit the industry as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I think it's, similar in what we talk about with Amplify. We all have jobs, and many of us need to employ people, but we can't perfect the systems that are in place. So utilizing resources like Denise at Amplify and people like Laurie at the Chamber, they're basically handing off, the map to accomplish, to make your jobs, or our jobs, I'll say that for myself, easier in the long term. So thank you for sharing that and for your time. So I think altogether over this evening, we've seen that collaboration, right, and communication across our industry is incredibly important. To quote the Kentucky governor, we're better together. But I say that quite sincerely. We really are. As we all work in the different parts of the industry that we do, there's so much strength and power when we come together to share a sport that we all love very sincerely. So just with that in mind, you all would have sat on a little card, I believe, that has a QR code on it. If we could all just take a minute, if you scan that QR code with your phone, that will lead you to a survey. We're going to take about 5 minutes here now. If you would please complete that survey, and really that's going to help us on who all of you are and why you're here, and to make sure that Amplify, and again resources like Laurie, that we can really continue to best serve you guys. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Hopefully COVID has taught us all how to use a QR code, but we're here if that's not the case. We can help you with that. And so I also think as you're looking into that, not to distract you from that, so we want you to do that survey here and now so you don't forget about it when you go home. But if anybody does have any questions while we're kind of waiting, giving this a few minutes to get started, please holler. I'll answer them if I can. I'm sure Denise and Laurie were better equipped to answer a lot of the questions, but we'll give that just a few minutes and then wrap up. It's like the first time I've ever been standing up and excited to see people looking down at their phones. And while you all are doing this as well, please, I'll distract you a little bit, but please continue with the survey. I actually didn't put in here a shameless plug for my organization for horse country. So I'm going to do that while you're filling out your surveys. So Horse Country is we're a membership organization, not for profit. Many of the major thoroughbred operations in Central Kentucky have joined, and we help them organize and put on tours at their farms. We're also the booking platform, and so it's half in equine industry, half tourism. And we're in a great position. I just started in February, but the organization has been around since 2015, which was a boom year for our industry with American Pharoah. And now you can buy a $23 ticket and go see American Pharoah in the flesh. So if you guys are ever down in the Central Kentucky area, which I would imagine there's probably some crossover there if we're in the thoroughbred industry, would really encourage you to visit our website. It's visithorsecountry.com. You can book tickets online. We also help with larger groups, or if you have an educational group, a lot of our members are very open to hosting educational groups at a reduced cost or for free. So if you know anybody down in that area who would be looking for educational opportunities like that, what Denise has done at Amplify and providing, I've been fortunate to go on a few of those tours. They've been really engaging events, but if you can't make it for one of those and still want to come, we highly recommend it. It's a easy entry point for anybody who's interested in our sport. I've definitely had several friends who got into the industry because they came to Kentucky and went on a horse farm tour and never looked back. So we hope you'll come and visit us. I still see some people looking down, but we'll go ahead and get this wrapped up. Please continue. So just thank you guys. Thank you all very much for being here, and not just on the survey, but for taking the time to be here with us tonight. I hope that you've seen here tonight that each and every one of these initiatives are incredibly important for the future success, the sustainability of our sport. But none of them matter much if people like you don't know about them, right? We have to have buy-in and commitment from our industry for any of them to be successful, and it starts with you all. So thank you for taking that time, and we ask you to spread the word, to help us further connect with young people, with newcomers, even with those who are already in the industry. And as been said many times here tonight, we also ask for you to get involved in whatever way that's possible for you. If you already work in the industry, please do consider becoming a mentor or reach out to Denise and team. If you can host an educational group, or if you can speak on a hangout, or there's plenty of opportunities to get engaged. If you're a young person or newcomer to the industry, please consider how Amplify and TfRI can help you on your journey in the business. Sign up to be a mentee in Amplify's program, and connect with us if you want to know and more information. There are great existing programs both nationally and internationally that Denise can really connect you with. We've got a former Kimi intern here. I did the Irish National Stud Program. Denise and I both did the Flying Start. There are great opportunities out there, and Denise can connect you with them. So earlier tonight, I did ask everyone to consider, what was the moment that got you into horse racing? And I hope through the evening you've seen that the goal of this event and all of these initiatives moving forward is to proactively create as many of those moments as possible for youth and newcomers to the sport. Trying to scale the unique opportunities we each had and try to offer them at scale. So I ask you now to consider, how can you provide one of those life-changing moments? Thank you very much to our host, Kate, and her team at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame for having us. It's such a beautiful facility. And a big thank you to Tom, Timothy, and Laurie as well for participating. I love talking about that scalability of what you're doing and how it can apply more to just our industry in Kentucky. The speakers from this evening, we're all going to be around here following this event. So if you have any questions or want to engage with us, please do come speak with us. That's how this industry moves forward, right? Is shaking hands and kissing babies. Yeah. Most importantly, please make sure to follow Amplify on social media so you can stay connected to these initiatives and things that Denise is pushing forward. She put that up there, but you can find Amplify on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you just search for Amplify Horse Racing, you can find them and stay up to date on their website, amplifyhorseracing.org. But thank you guys very much for coming. I hope you have learned quite a bit. I hope you're as excited about the opportunities, the potential that our industry has, as I know I am here standing before you. So thank you for joining us. Safe travels back home. Enjoy the rest of the meet as well. Thank you all.